welcome to our second week of our world table. We're doing Michigan this week. We've got things all set up. We're going to be making a cherry pie. We're going to be making some Coney-style hot dogs, Michigan-style hot dogs. And over here we've got everything set up for our delicious pasties. So we're really excited to have you joining us this week. And be sure to give us, just keep giving us feedback from the first video and this video, letting us know what you think and what you enjoy and what you think maybe we can change. And so for this week, we're going to start it off with Matt with another great tip. He's going to show us how to cut a pepper.
Hey, welcome back. Week 2. All right, so bell pepper. It's kind of an annoying thing to cut. A lot of people don't really like to cut them up. You're just going to start. You're going to cut around the top. And you're going to be getting all the seeds out. So there's that top. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut. We're just going to make cuts around the outside to cut this into sections. Okay, and you want to get this white part out. And then after we get this white out, then we'll go ahead and we'll rinse it in cold water to get out the remaining seeds, because we don't want any seeds in our recipe. Alright, so now we've rinsed them. You can see there's no seeds on them anymore. And then we've got some nice little fillets almost. So then we're just going to cut them in strips. And this part really helps to have a very sharp knife. So you can see this is one of my knives. I like using a smaller knife for this. But, you know, use what you have. Probably the sharpest knife you have will be better for this. Alright, so now we've got it in these nice, fairly even strips. This is basically when you would be done if you were going to serve it as like a raw vegetable that you were going to dip in hummus or in your ranch dip or whatever, you know, whatever kind of vegetable dip you were going to use. But then you're just going to like lay them out like this. And you're just going to cut into whatever size dice you're looking for. So in this case we want fairly small bite-sized pieces. And there you go. And that is one section complete, and then we'll have 4 more sections. So it's pretty easy. Just takes a little bit of time and some getting used to get it right and make it fairly simple and quick. We'll see you, we'll be making the doughs for the pie and the pasties, so we'll see you in a minute.
Alright, on to the pasties. We're going to be starting with our 4½ cups of flour and our 1 teaspoon salt, and we're going to whisk that to get that salt nice and dispersed throughout our flour. Then we're going to be taking our shortening here in just a minute, and we're going to add that in small little pieces throughout the flour so that when we start cutting, it's going to be already mixed through a little bit. And as we're going to see, this is a technique. It's called cutting in the shortening. Normally you'll use a pastry blender for this, but this is an old technique in case you don't have that, where you could just use knives. And you want to cut that shortening in so that it's well dispersed throughout our flour. And there we go. That was sped up. Right, so we've got our ice water. You want this very cold. We're going to make a hole in the middle of our flour and shortening mixture. Pour that water in, and then we're going to stir it together as quickly as we can. And then we're going to form our dough by just mixing. Start with your spoon, then with your hands, and continue continue to mix, continue to mix, continue to mix, until you get a ball of dough that is not sticky. And then we're gonna set that off to the side and we're gonna let it sit while we prepare our filling. So that is what your dough should look like right here. Perfect. Look at that. Gorgeous ball of dough. All right, and on to the filling. So here's our filling. We're going to start with our meats, and I measured them out. You don't necessarily have to do that, but it is going to give you sort of a more accurate amount of the filling. All right, and then this is the bouillon. I use Better Than Bouillon. It's the same as using cubes, so you're going to dissolve that in hot water. So now that we've got our ingredients prepared, we're going to be going ahead and mixing them together. So first we're going to start off with our half cup of rutabaga. Then we've got our 1 cube of beef bouillon, or the equivalent, in a half cup of hot water. It doesn't need to be boiling necessarily, but it needs to be close. And then we've got our tablespoon of salt, 1 tablespoon, 1.5 teaspoons of MSG. Now obviously if you have concerns about MSG, you can leave that out, replace it with salt. That's perfectly acceptable, but it is going to change the flavor a bit. Then we've got a teaspoon of ground black pepper, 2 carrots shredded. Depending on how much you like carrot, you can choose some very large carrots or smaller carrots. That's up to you. The ones I used were pretty moderately sized. It's kind of in the middle. Not a huge fan of carrot, but I don't hate it either, so. Alright, then you've got 5.5 cups of potatoes. I know the recipe says thinly sliced. I like diced or cubed potatoes better. That's a preference thing, so you just do what you would prefer. And then we've got our 1 yellow onion. Again, if you really like onion, you can get a huge onion. I had, again, a kind of a middle of the road onion. So, and then that's all of our ingredients. Then we're just going to stir that up, and we want to get a really even mixture, so we're not getting bites that are just meat or bites that are just our vegetables. So it is going to be a little while mixing that all together because there is a lot there, but we will use all of it. All right, now you're going to take your dough, you're going to split your dough into 8 equal sized balls, and then you're just going to roll it out, and you want about 8 inches in diameter on your dough, so, and about 1/4 inch thick. So I had already made one as a practice run, and this is my second one. So yeah, and then you're going to get 1.5 cups of your mixture. Put that right onto your dough on 1/2, and then you're going to kind of flatten it out, make it just like that, so that you can see when you fold it over, you get that nice crescent shape. Okay, and then you're going to pinch the sides to close the pasty so that your ingredients don't leak out as it cooks. Now, one thing, these are pretty dry, so it's hard to mess them up. They're not really there's not liquid inside, so it's not really going to leak out too much. So you don't have to get these perfect, just as well as you can. And just like you saw there, kind of flatten it out. Alright, then once you finish that, you're going to take a fork or whatever your preferred tool is, and you're going to crimp the edges to give it that nice detailed look on the outside. And then you're just going to cut a few slits in the top so that you don't have steam in there blowing up your pasty, and put it on your tray. And then this step's not in the recipe, this is a preference thing. I like egg wash on my pastries, so I put egg wash on it. You could use butter or you could leave it plain, either way.
For our pie crust, we're going to use 1 cup of flour and 1/2 teaspoon of salt and 7 tablespoons of shortening. I use butter flavored Crisco. And I'm just going to put in about 1/2 of a tablespoon of sugar little bit of sweetness. And now we're going to blend it a little bit. This is the Pampered Chef Pastry Blender. It works really nicely. Just getting that shortening mixed in with the dry ingredients. If you don't have a pastry blender, you can use a fork or a couple forks or 2 sharp knives. Matt is going to demonstrate that. Alright, so we have 1 egg beaten, and we're going to add a 1/4 tablespoon of vinegar. And then we're going to add a 1/4 cup of cold water. Now I'm just using cold water from the tap because I can get it pretty cold. If not, you might want to just put some water in a cup with some ice and just make sure that is well blended. I'm using a little egg beater here. Get that all mixed together with the egg. We're just going to mix that into our dry ingredients. And be sure to mix it well. I'm going to stir that all in. Make sure all the dry ingredients are well coated with the wet ingredients. If while you're mixing it, it seems like it's still a little too wet, too sticky, just get a little bit more flour and sprinkle it on top. Make sure just do a little bit at a time because you can always add more, but we don't want it to get too dry. So now we're just going to sprinkle a little bit of flour onto our surface and get this dough ready to knead. So just kind of roll it around back and forth, knead it, make sure it's in a good position. Don't you wish that you had magic rolling pins that appeared out of nowhere? So once we have it in a nice shape, we're going to start in the center and roll out towards the sides. What you're wanting to do is make sure that it's even, that the thickness of the crust is even all the way across. So you're just making smooth strokes from the center and out in every direction. Now really you only need to make this as big as your pie pan. So this would probably be about good. But another tool that I have that I really like is this, I don't know what it's called. Matt's grandma got it for me for a present, but it's super nice for rolling out dough. It's really good, like especially if you want to do a pizza dough or something like that, pizza crust that's quite a bit bigger, or if you have a deep dish pie pan and you just need your crust to be a little bit bigger, but for whatever size you need. Mine's just, I think, a standard 9-inch pie pan, but this just makes it super easy to kind of roll it out and get it all one like level of thickness and that it's a perfect circle. Just roll it all smooth. So just make sure you do put a little bit of flour on the top and bottom. And if you want to put a little water under the plastic underneath, that definitely helps to keep it in place. So the really nice thing about this is being able to transfer it to the pie pan, because instead of having to pick it up and maneuver it, you can just flip it over right on top. So that makes it really nice. As you can see, it's a little bit sticky. I probably should have put a little bit more flour, especially around the edges, but it's all good. Once you have that off, we're just gonna make sure that the crust is filling the bottom. It's close and just tucked in on all around. We don't want any air bubbles, or like I said, you want it to be even all the way around. Then we're just gonna take a butter knife and cut around the outside edge of the pie plate. if you want to do something fancy, make some fluted edges, anything like that, you absolutely can. Just use the excess dough. Or if you just like a thicker edge, you know, you can just put that dough back up around the edge of the pie. And that is pretty easily done. But for this, we're just going to do this. Super easy. And voila! Now for the pie filling, we're going to get some lemon zest. So just clean your lemon well and use a fine grater. This one's from Pampered Chef, obviously. And you're just going to grate along the outside of the lemon peel. And we need about a half a teaspoon for this. Honestly, if you use a little more, it's probably fine. It's delicious. And then we're going to use a tablespoon of lemon juice. I juiced my own, but you can just use some from the bottle, whatever you like best. And then a half teaspoon of almond extract. I love this stuff. Oh, it smells so good. Now we're going to mix those wet ingredients. Make sure that zest gets really mixed through to all the cherries. This is 4 cups of tart cherries. You can find these frozen or in a can. Make sure they're pitted. All right, now we're going to mix 1 cup of sugar with a 1/4 cup of cornstarch. Just going to make sure that is mixed together well. You could use a spoon or a whisk. And then we're just going to coat the cherry mixture with this dry mixture. So I did about a half and stirred that in, and then just keep coating it with the rest of the dry mixture. So yummy. And then we're just going to pour it into our crust. And just make sure it's all smoothed out, even. And now we're going to make our streusel. So this is 3/4 cup old-fashioned oats and a 1/4 teaspoon salt. Add a 1/2 cup packed brown sugar and 1/3 cup melted butter. Now the oats really are important. You need to make sure that it says old-fashioned oats, not the quick oats, because that will cook it completely differently. So we're just going to make sure that's all stirred in, and then, oh yeah, we need a 1/2 cup of flour. It was being sneaky over there. So we're just going to mix those ingredients all together. So the thing that you really want is to make sure that the butter is all mixed around, and then the brown sugar is all crumbled and evenly distributed. I'm just going to get my hands in here a little bit, make sure all that brown sugar is mixed in really well. And then we're just going to cover the pie. It's going to be so good. Now this is going to be cooked at 375 for about 40 to 55 minutes. So set a timer for 40 minutes and check it. The strudel, so you want the streusel to look nice and browned and the edges of the crust. If you have a crust guard, or you can just put around some tin foil after 40 minutes if you still want it to cook a little bit longer. Just to make sure that the edges of your crust don't get overdone. And there we have it. Looks delicious. Yay.
Detroit-style Coney's. These were super delicious, and the recipe's really easy, so I hope you guys will make them. So you're starting with your 4 teaspoons of chili powder. You're going to add 1 teaspoon paprika. Then you're going to add 1 teaspoon of cumin, 1 teaspoon dried oregano, 1 teaspoon of salt, and a 1/2 teaspoon of ground black pepper. You're going to mix that together and set it off to the side. Now you're going to take your ½ pound of ground beef heart. This was, I think, really worth it. So if you can find it, definitely use the beef heart because it definitely gives it that really strong, awesome, good flavor. Then you're going to add your 1 pound of lean ground chuck. Not lean, just ground chuck. Okay, you're going to cook that, and that is going to cook for a little while. You see how those juices are coming out there. That's how you know that it's getting really nice and good and brown. Okay, and you're going to cook that until it looks just about like this. So that nice brown color, all that red or pink is out of there. Okay, then you're going to strain off all the extra fat into a small bowl. So you don't want that to go down the drain. And put that meat back over, let it sit to the side for now. We're going to take that fat and we are going to be making a roux. Right now we're going to take that fat and we're going to be making a roux. So we're going to take 3 tablespoons of our fat and we're going to add it to 3 tablespoons of flour. Typically with the roux, you're going to want equal portions of fat and flour. Okay. So a roux is used as a thickening agent, so it's going to be the base of a lot of cream-based soups, and in this case we're going to be using it to thicken our tomato-based sauce that is going to end up going into our meat. So you can see here, you just want to mix it together and then you want to let it cook until it gets a little bit browned, and then we're going to be adding our 1½ cups of chicken broth. And you're going to want to break that up. So mine got a little bit more firm than I wanted it to be. You may not have that result, and just let me know how yours goes. But when you put it in the blender, it's going to take care of that anyway, so it's not a huge deal. Then we're going to add our 2 teaspoons of cider vinegar here. And back to my nemesis, our 4 ounces of tomato paste. As you can see, I'm going to speed this up because, of course, it was difficult for me to get that tomato paste out of there. Go ahead and stir that together, and then we'll just let it simmer on a very low heat. It's not a big deal if it doesn't mix completely because we're going to blend it later. And then after that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to mix in our 1 yellow onion, our 3 cloves of minced garlic, and our red bell pepper into our meat mixture. Now after this step, we have a step that didn't get recorded for whatever reason, and I apologize for that. But what you're going to do is you're going to push that mixture to the side so you have a bare spot on your pan. And then you're going to take your spice mixture and you're going to lay it out in that bare section so that you can toast the spices. And what you're looking for when you toast spices is a really aromatic fragrance that you're going to be able to smell it, and that's the only way you can tell when it's done because you don't want it to burn. So once you can really smell it, go ahead and mix it back into your meat mixture, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the next step. What I've been doing while I was talking about the spices is we took our tomato sauce that we made with our roux and we went ahead and put it in a blender so that we can blend it, get that really nice consistent sauce that's almost like a paste-like consistency is what you're looking for. So now once we've pureed that in the blender, once we've got our consistency we're looking for, now we're going to go ahead and add that to our meat mixture, and then we're going to stir it together, and that's going to give us our final Coney sauce. Again, really flavorful. Even my boys who don't actually usually like chili dogs, they said they really enjoyed this and they thought it was really delicious. So I encourage you to make this. Might seem a bit adventurous, but it really isn't that crazy. And with that, we're finally ready to build our dogs. One thing you're going to want to note here is you're going to want to use a pork-based dog. So that's what I'm showing here. This was the only primarily pork-based dog that they had at our grocery store. But look for that specifically. Then you're going to want to cut it in half without cutting it completely in half and lay it flat on either your grill or your pan, whichever you prefer, so that you can give it that nice, really grilled look. Then you're going to add a line of mustard. Again, ballpark is traditional, but just use I used French's. Just use whatever you have. Then from there, you're going to add your Coney sauce, Just pile it on there, and then add our diced white onion on top of that, and that will finish them off. And there you have Detroit-style Conys. They were absolutely amazing.
We're ready to eat. We've got our We're ready to eat. We've got our pasties and our Coney-style hot dogs, and our pie is cooling for our delicious dessert. So we're excited to dig in and give it a try.
Everything looks great. We're about to try it, and we will film a closing video here in a little while and let you guys know how it was, and give you some information about next week. Alright, that was a great meal. We really enjoyed it a lot. Not as much as the Ohio meal. Sorry, Michigan fans. But
It was good.
yeah, it was still good. I definitely especially recommend the Coney dogs. The sauce was very unique. And you won't probably be able to find anything that tastes similar to that outside of Michigan, unless you make it yourself.
Yeah,
So,
which you can do.
Yep.
Even our boys liked it. They kind of looked at it and weren't sure, but they tried it and they both ended up saying that they really liked it. So that was good.
Yeah.
And then the pasties, we definitely thought the pasties were good. They were taste-wise, they were really good, but they were definitely a bit dry. So we recommend making a gravy.
Yeah. Yeah, when we were eating them the first time, I mean, it is very traditional to have them dry like that, because that way they last, and you know, you could take them with you just wrapped up and eat them, right, just like they are. And yeah, there's a lot of history behind pasties, but yeah, if you just make some gravy on the side, and then you can either dip it or pour the gravy on as you eat. It's very much an improvement on the original traditional pasty. And then for dessert, the cherry pie.
Yeah. So we used the tart cherries, which I wasn't super sure about, but with the streusel top, that was so sweet. It was really delicious, just a wonderful pairing, and definitely serve it with some vanilla ice cream. That just made it perfect. I don't think there's really anything to improve on it. It was delicious.
Yep. And next week we're going to be in Indiana. We'll be making some breaded pork sandwiches.
Go look at the picture on our website of it.
In many places they are enormous. Our equipment will limit us a bit. Ours won't be quite that big. But they will be as similar as possible in every respect other than the size. We'll also be making some Indiana corn casserole and a sweet cream pie for dessert.
It's called sugar cream pie.
Oh yeah, sugar cream pie. Yep.
It sounds
Custard-based
amazing.
pie.
I'm excited to try it.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be the highlight of next week, I think. So yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And follow us on our social medias. We will be, as time progresses, we're going to be getting the hang of each one and making each one a little bit more unique, so that all of them will be worth subscribing to, and you can follow us on all of them to stay up to date and get, just a little bit more of the inside information. So
make sure to keep coming back to our website. We're going to keep trying to make updates and adding some fun facts and stuff to each state, and as we have time and we're able to. So keep checking back, and we'll see you next week.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.